Day 6 is coming to an end. I think I might copy over. I have something pre-written that I wrote fucking 10 years ago almost. So I'm going to copy that over because it's a perfect fit to which is the topic of this. For the longest time I've been working on this book, right? That's all I ever talk about. I got a book I'm working on. And it's kind of bigger than that because it's like, I don't know, imagine like, oh my god, I don't know, like hearing George Lucas just say, like Star Wars I'm working on, or Tolkien talking about like, yeah, I'm working on Lord of the Rings, you know? It's so much bigger than like, oh, it's a book you're writing? Like, well, no, it's multiple books, there's a whole world, there's a whole thing, you know? It's kind of shit like that, right? I've made it very apparent before, those are the two idols of mine. There's not really any other idol that I have. What puts this book, like what makes this book what it is, are four things. Almost five. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, the Beatles, and ELO. And when I say the Beatles, even like their solo stuff. The one that's almost a fifth is the Beach Boys. All of that shit is like, that's everything to me. Those things, those are the fucking things that I like. Those are the things that help me find myself in some sense, help me trace who I am. They helped me become who I am, and they helped guide me into what I'm fucking trying to do here. Like, it's really that simple. So throughout that, I showed you the picture of these, let's mark the page so we don't forget it. These fucking journals of mine, right? These guys. Okay, this was years and years of me trying to figure out the story, trying to just write about how I feel, trying to practice writing, trying to explore lore, or trying to explore my feelings on things, right? They're journals. Pure and simple, they're fucking journals. You scan through it, you have poems in here, you know, you have ideas, there are short stories in here, there are things describing what lands are and maybe who lives there. There's exploration of lore as like, what kind of people are they? There's the story of the Forgotten King and the Titans. There's the story of like me sitting down like, okay, like what does a hero do? And then using examples like, okay, Luke has this, Frodo has that. What does Eris have? What can I do to find what the story's about? There's a lot of that shit in here. There's personal stories of like my life. There's me re-exploring like what the Forgotten King might be, or what the Slop King might be, or what this might be. Like, it's just everything. And I wrote in those for so many years. It wasn't until 2000 and I don't remember, was that 17 that I lived with Kevin and his friend, other Kevin? That's when I actually really started writing the book, right around that time. So it only really took me 6 years to write the book. In that time, I've talked about many times, there was so much I needed to learn, and it was a very difficult journey. I've talked about how the writing is. You know, I'd go and write something, then I have to redo it because it wasn't right, and keeping everything straight. Like I said, like I showed you in the last one, like I call it keeping everything straight, because it's like I gave two examples of how hard it can be sometimes, right? Everything needs to be explored, everything needs to have an answer, but sometimes in answering one thing, you made a question in another, right? I don't need to go in that. Watch the episode Day 5 of writing. This one is finding a connection and everything becoming whole again. When I'm scanning through these journals and I'm looking at the work that I'm doing, and I'm going like, wow, it like I wanted this to happen and now it's finally happening. I want the hero to have this happen to him. I want him to explore that. This is what a blah blah blah, whatever it is. And to look back at the books and see like, holy shit, I'm making that happen. Because you forget about it, right? You got your character, you got your hero, and you want him to go through these things, and sometimes along the way you forget everything you want to have happen to him. But when you realize that you've kept true to yourself the whole time, when you realize that he's the very thing that you wanted him to be, you can't help but feel that mirroring yourself. You know, the hero in my book is becoming exactly what I wanted him to become. The exact thing. Though maybe there are times where I don't think that because I don't realize that maybe I know more now. And in knowing more, it can kind of shroud itself and feel like it's separate from the past, but it really isn't. If I say I want my hero to walk into a dark forest and meet a threshold guardian who will lead him to the, pretend, this is not it, so I can throw you off, lead him to the well of knowledge. And I'm like, I want that to happen. Just because now I know more about where the well of knowledge came from and who made it, and how long it's been there, and in whose hands it's been in, though I may know more about how the forest is laid out, sometimes in knowing those things, it makes you feel like you're not true to your original story. Your original, like, this would be a great idea. You're just deeper into it, and so it engulfs you. You know what I mean? As I'm looking throughout the journals, it's so amazing to me to see it all come together. Something that I've been working on for so many fucking years. I did a little bit of like calculation, and somewhere between August 9th and August 20th with 2012 was when this journey began. Somewhere in that era. How many years is that? 11 years ago? I don't know, I can't do exact. Like 11 years in this many months, I don't know. But in that time, capturing everything that I have on these journals here, I have more journals over there, a stack that big, of me working shit out. I call them like my lore ones. I have them over here, I have them full in this filing cabinet, and I have more shit on my computer. There's a lot, right? Virtually probably a stack this big of just stuff. The problem that I would always face is I find myself too in the moment. I think Jacob said it best, like too in the clouds sometimes. Just too, like if you're always in the clouds, you don't have a foundation. That's me. I'm always up there, floating around, right? I said it in the last video. And he's the foundation. He's the one that helps bring me down. I think sometimes being in the clouds too much means you're in the mists, and sometimes you lose sight of things. Sometimes I find that I don't have a rigid, like I'm gonna fucking do this and I'm gonna do that and I want that to happen. I'm always kind of like, whatever happens, happens. That'll be kind of cool, we'll figure it out. And I even would do it with my writing, just... I've gotten better at finding foundations, but I'll be honest. One character named Nakum in my book, I don't know what the fuck's happening with him. I had an outline for him to do this, to be here, and to have all these things happen. Well, I took that, threw it away, and I'm over here now, and I don't even know what the fuck to do. I have a general idea, but it's more like a in-here idea. Like, wouldn't that be cool if he did this? Let's write a whole segment where he's in a land you've never thought about before. Let's see what happens. And now I got new characters, I have new plot things, and it's just like, that's just something I do. I can't help it. If I find too much rigidity, if I find too much like plot laid out nice and easy, I go like, well, I don't want to. What's the point? I love the mystery. What's interesting for me, and I hope I did it well, and I'll really make sure to refine it better once time comes. But when you read the books, and for those of you that have read it, I didn't even know what was going to happen next either. And I wonder at times if you can sense that. There was so many times, or even myself, I'm like, what the fuck? How did they get here? How the fuck's he gonna get out of this situation? What the fuck are we gonna do about that? Like, and the ending, even I was like, holy fuck, that's how it ends? Like, because I was so like flippant and so loose about how I wanted the book to go. I would say I have sometimes to put my foot down and say like, no, these elements have to happen. But I've never been intimate about like when they should happen and how they should happen. If I have a book of 10, like a 10-book series, and in that I want them to meet God, the characters, let's say, I'm never going to be like, this is probably how it should happen. I'm just like, I just know they have to meet him. I don't know when and where. It might be in book 2 or it might be in book 10. No fucking clue. We'll let it happen as it happens. And so, because of that, I usually write in stream of consciousness, because I think any fictional writing is stream of consciousness. How can it not be, right? You're making shit up on the fly. Like, you're actively having two people communicate. Like, when those sections happen, where I have characters talking to each other on the fly, like, yeah, what do you think this is going to happen? Space. I don't know. I thought da. And then, well, he said this and that. Well, this is what I think. You know, you're doing that in real time, and it's like, you're making this shit up. There are times I myself wonder, like, who's really talking here? How do I know what they're going to say and how they should say it? Like, I don't speak this way. That's not what I say. I don't use those fucking words. Who is this guy? It's interesting. It really is, just to see it all coming together. And, you know, I'm probably like 50-something pages in book 2. And it's like, I know what's coming. And I feel so excited, because I've been planning what's coming next for like 10 years. 10 years of like, man, I want this to happen. I want that to happen. I want this to happen too. It almost makes me feel like emotional. The fact that I'm finally getting to that point in my story that I've always wanted to get to. You know, like, it took me fucking 10, 11 years to get there, but I'm fucking getting there now. Like, I'm finally figuring it out. You laid out the road to go forward. You planned this adventure. But then when you scouted it out, you found so many like troubles, so many places you couldn't go, so many things you couldn't do, and needed more like exploration. We can't just venture into this unknown land. We have to plot it more. What if we get lost? How are we gonna, you know, what kind of camping equipment are we gonna need? What about food? What about like all this shit? And it was these years of sitting down with myself, with Jacob, and with Kevin, and saying like, how can we make this happen? And they would help me in the ways that they can help me. And then I'd come back and try to figure it out again. And now that I'm setting off on this fucking journey, I'm hitting the point now, which is the entire fucking reason why I started writing in the first place. Sitting down, and it's so cool to have the journals, because I get to look, the first journal I ever made, I get to look at the first fucking page of me trying to figure out what the fuck I'm gonna do. Me trying to just like, well, what should it be like? What should that be? What should this be? I get to look at that and look at the creation of the book. Like, what is the book about? I have no idea. I get to look at that. And then I get to see the maps of the world coming into creation, and like me trying to figure it out. These journals are in a certain order. I can watch it progress. And to sit where I am now. Man, if I was recording the whole time, it would be nuts for you to hear from its humble beginnings to right now. It's crazy. I'm so glad I left myself a trail to every once in a while look back on. You know, and all throughout this book here, like when I did my first, in the first 5 pages, I had a really cool idea. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? I did it at the end of book 1, and it felt like it felt so cool to like, oh my God, I had that idea so long ago and I'm finally doing it. And all throughout it, there were so many times where, I would kind of go back through and like, reread things or relook at stuff and say, yes, I should do that. Yes, that is a good idea. Like, I've called these before my playbooks, and that's kind of what they are. It's like on a sports team. Like, these have the plays in it that can help me win the game, to help me counter the other team's offense or defense or whatever it happens to be. This will keep me in line with myself. Things I can eventually use in time, and I can just find out what this story is. And here's what's cool about it. All throughout those journals, there's this overwhelming sensation of like, what am I trying to say? If you were to read everything, you'd find maybe that was the overall like feeling. What am I trying to say? What am I looking at here? And the book itself captures that. Like, not only just from the point of view of the main character, where he's walking and going like, what the fuck is my purpose? What am I doing? Why does any of this matter? And the other characters themselves struggle with whatever they have. But that's the whole point of the stories too. Like the meta shit. Like when you start unraveling what the meta is to these books, like the reason that they're told. Like when you find out the fact in Lord of the Rings, the book's supposed to be a recounting, like the Shire's reckoning of the events of Lord of the Rings, as retold by a Gondorian scribe or some shit like that. Then you find that out, you're like, oh wow, the book has more depth to it. That's cool, they must have added this, they must have done that, and they blah blah blah. When you find that element out of my story, I think everything will become fucking clear. And it even is slowly to me, like, oh wow, that's what I'm writing for. That was the purpose the whole fucking time. I don't know, man. It's like, so far, because again, I'm 50 pages into book 2. And clearly, there's at least 3 or 4 more books. At least. So I'm like not even halfway through the book series, or whatever it's called, anthology or trilogy. I don't know. We'll find out how many it is. It's been a really cool ride. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's happened along the way, and where I started from as a person, and where I am now. Though I might say a lot that I feel like I'm a retard, I feel like I'm stupid, I've learned so much since where I started. There's that kid, that broken kid who didn't have any hope for himself and thought he would be a nothing, and never thought he'd amount to anything. As a kid who thought, I'm just going to work at a fucking grocery store and I'm just going to be, that's my life. I'm going to be alone and I'm never going to find happiness. That was something I thought since a little kid until relatively recently. And to see the growth of who I became through the journals, through the fucking book, through this channel, it's crazy. You know what I mean? To watch your own growth, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm okay with it. I'm not trying to sell myself to anybody, so it's okay that I don't have a lot of views. Or it's okay that I don't, do the things that I should do to really expose the channel to more people. I'm not really here for that. I'm kind of here for a documentation of the creation of these books that I think one day some people will really like. Maybe some people might really resonate with them, or it with them, I should say. Them with it would be cool too. That's the point, That's why I make these right here, because if you've, by the point, like in the future, when you've read these books and you've gone through and well, I'm in book 2 this part of the channel, this is when he started writing it. He began this time. So if we do the math, this day is when he wrote this section. And so you can kind of find that, and you can see where I was coming from and what was going on in my head as I come out of writing that. So when you read chapter 2 of book 2, you're like, man, he was talking about this after that. This must be what was going on in his head. Well, when I read it, I felt this. And I just feel like what it does is it unlocks a connection. One that's shared between us all. And that's the fucking point of everything, you know? I didn't do this for book 1. I couldn't tell you about the writing sessions because I've totally forgotten them, but the fact that I have the writing sessions here after I wrote, like day 6, like, okay, well, on day 6, he was talking to Cloik, and they were going to go to this temple or something, like, pretty fucking sweet, you know? You know, like, again, the reason I do it is because I love when the Beatles, you can hear them create their music. Hear them in the studio, hear the Beach Boys in the studio. Well, why don't I just do that too? You know? I have, again, once the books are out, I will release the hours upon hours upon hours that I have recorded. Because I would have conversations with Kevin and Jacob, and I'd take my phone, hit record, and set it somewhere, and we would just try to figure stuff out. I'll release that shit so you can really see how things were born. Like, I showed you some examples yesterday of like things that you know, I record because I have a bad memory, so I have some that are 4 or 5 hours long of just us just sitting there trying to like think of things like, how can we make this work? Well, what about that? What about this? And the day I release that shit's when the books are published, so people can find that stuff too. And it's just a completely open door policy. One that I'm very excited to do in the future, but I want to call this one Finding Connections, Becoming Whole, or something like that. But on to the next one. So next week we'll begin the writing for the next section here. But first, let us finish Strange Magic.